Informal settlements and what government does for people in those areas. Thapelo Mohapi is the General Secretary of Abahlali Basemjondolo, shack dwellers movement. He, of course, has been listening to that conversation as well about what's been happening around informal settlements. Thapelo, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time on Newzroom Afrika Channel 405. How would you characterise the help that the ANC government or the ANC-led government now gives people in informal settlements? Do you believe the promise that the ANC is going to help people who live in informal settlements?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon to the viewers. The reality is that the people who were at the stadium today and the people in the surrounding, in the Khayelitsha area, will, after this, go back into the reality of being faced with poverty, with not having access to basic services such as water and sanitation. And it's a shame, Stephen, that 30 years later, we are still talking about basic things such as water and sanitation. Informal settlements such as COVID, which is the largest settlements in Khayelitsha, Kandu, Maspumelele, Danun. Those are settlements that sometimes in December we know for a fact that they will be facing with fire. And how to deal with that? I thought that the president will come up with facts and actions that are going to be taken in as far as how do we provide basic services for the informal settlements that have long, over the years, have not been receiving those services from the government.
We see in the Western Cape, of course, it is the Democratic Alliance that governs both in the province and in the city, of Cape Town, under which Khayelitsha falls. Do you see any difference in between the way in which the ANC governs areas with informal settlements and the way the DA governs? So, for example, KwaZulu-Natal was governed by the ANC for a long time, now in a coalition there. In Gauteng, for example, the ANC still very much the driving force in that provincial government. Do you see any difference in the way in which provincial and local government deal with informal settlements, depending on which party is in power there?
No, I think I've always said that it looks like there's communications within the parties when it comes into running the municipalities. As I've mentioned, there was a fire in Danun, there was a fire in Maspumelele, and the same applies in eThekwini, where people who live in informal settlements are not regarded as human beings rather than human waste. The city of Cape Town, for instance, now is looking at criminalizing people who are living in shacks and people who are homeless. And that is how government deals with people in all the municipalities. And I would have hoped that that is one of the things that the president would have addressed. And all we are asking for as people who are living in shack settlements is that the government must not speak about us without us. We must be part of those discussions. And we know what we need. And we know how those things can be resolved. And therefore, as I've mentioned, COVID, which is a settlement in Cape Town, that the DA have said, because people have moved there during COVID-19, because people have moved there, the DA refused to put services because they claim that people have occupied without the government's consent. But at the end of the day, it's people, women, children, who suffer the consequences as a result of not having access to a basic necessity, such as a place where they can relieve themselves and have access to water and live like any other person in this country.
There's so many aspects to all of this. I mean, the ANC spoke at length during this week in the run-up to this event, saying that they were going to Khayelitsha to sort of spend time with the people, their people, depending on how you see these things. The DA mayor there, Jordan Hill-Lewis, said no, it was because they hadn't booked a stadium in time. How do you view all of this? I mean, I don't know how much, whether this is really an important argument or if it's just political parties being political parties, but do you think the ANC is going to learn anything from its time in Khayelitsha?
Well, I hope so, Stephen. I hope they had visited not only the townships, but also the informal settlement that I've mentioned. Right now, in April, there will be rains, heavy rains in Cape Town. People are going to be washed away by floods. I'm talking about Tempolweni, Kandu, all those areas that have waterlogged. And it takes some time for disaster management to respond in such crises. And I hope that the ANC will speak to their coalition partners in the GNU to say, look, can you treat informal settlements as emergencies. Let's be proactive. Let's prevent disasters from happening, because we know now that there's going to be floods in Cape Town. People are going to suffer the consequences. What can be done in that regard? And I hope it's a bit too late for the ANC. I mean, this should have been done a long time ago. They should have gone to the people on the ground, engaged with the people on the ground. So for me, Stephen, whether this was as a result of not booking the stadium in time, but I think for us, this is something that they should do in all settlements all over the place. Go where the people are, speak to the people, hear what the people want, and the people know what they want, and people will tell you how to actually come out of the situation that we are facing as a country.
Thapelo Mohapi, always, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate the time. General Secretary of Abahlali Basemjondolo.